Gear up as Cash Miller and a team of accomplished guests steer you on an enlightening voyage filled with valuable tips, fresh insights, and effective strategies. Welcome to Marketing Masters, the Agency Power Show.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cash Miller. I'm the host of Marketing Masters, CEO of Titan Digital. Today, I've got with me Mariana Henninger. She's with Brand Magnetic, and we're going to be talking videos, and specifically the type of videos that can, really tell your company's story. There's so much you can do with video, but people often still think of commercials and advertisements and such. But companies have the opportunity to really tell their story, why they got into business to begin with, what it is that makes them different from other people, but there's a way to go about this. So hey, it's great to have you with us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, Cash. So my true passion is I help entrepreneurs really kill the painfully long sales cycle that so many of us have and build trust faster with one single video. It's a 2 to 4 minute brand video. And the way I work with them is that I help them create it. So it's really a done with you program. And my background is in documentary filmmaking. I've been a documentary filmmaker for 15 years. I've kind of traveled the world, lived in 4 different continents, worked for the New York Times and Time Magazine and NBC and Wall Street Journal and Washington Post, you name it. My work's kind of been everywhere. I was also, I won an Emmy, was nominated for another one just last year. So I really am passionate about all things personal, intimate, visual storytelling, specifically in video, and how we can use that to grow our businesses.
Yeah, we've done a lot of video as an agency over the years and stuff, and it's usually telling stories and everything, but there's so much more that can go on. And I know, and I'm sure you've run into people that you put them on video and they lose it. They just don't know exactly, they don't know how to tell their story. They don't know what to say. It's a stage fright, things like that. So, the first thing I would ask you is just how do you help them, overcome it, because that's just such a tough thing.
For sure. So I'm not in the business of making people feel comfortable on camera. I think that's a really big step. And what I've done is I'm really focused on how can we get you as quickly as possible to one video that's going to move the needle in your business. It's going to help your audience connect with you emotionally, understand your values, your mission, why you do what you do. Why should they pick you over anybody else, right? And to your point, a lot of folks don't really have their messaging nailed down. So that's what we focus on, even before we focus on how you feel in front of the camera. And the way that I do this, the way that I've found that will get us to that final product, that final video, that brand video that we're going to work on the fastest is to create a word-for-word script. Now, when you think of script, you might think of something that's rigid or that sounds like it was written by an academic or something, it's not conversational necessarily, but it totally is. It should sound exactly like you. It should sound like a page out of your journal. It should sound like your audience, when they see you, when they hear you in the brand video, they should feel like they just had a coffee with you and just learned something about you that they never knew before, connected with you in a completely new and intimate way. And so what we do is we get to the point of your message where your script is really nailed down. It's in your words, but also in the words of your audience, because that's what's really going to move their heartstrings. When they hear you describe something in the way that they would describe it, wow, there's an immediate connection there. It's wow, you're inside my head, right? That's the feeling that we want people to have. You totally get it. You get what I'm going through. You get, and I get you. We're connected now. And so by having that script, that's already a big challenge that's removed, which is having to kind of share your story, in an ad hoc or impromptu way. When I've interviewed people for documentaries, sometimes we'd spend hours in an interview because I was editing in my head and I knew what pieces were missing, but I wanted that to come conversationally. And so I have some tips and tricks on how to deliver that script in a way that sounds natural on camera. But it does make it a lot easier to have a script. And that's why I teach that.
Yeah. Certainly. What makes these kinds of videos? I mean, there's all four, that we have all sorts of different ways we can market businesses, and, owners can market themselves. But, what makes these videos like different from other, forums? Why would you do these kinds of videos?
Yeah. Right. So Cash, as I told you, I've been a documentary filmmaker for so long. That was my bread and butter, right? I came across somebody's story or wanted to tell a story. And so I found a person whose life, whose story, personally reflected this kind of bigger picture. And I did my best to build that trust with them and capture the parts of their story, like in a very emotional way, in order to move the needle. In fact, like there's a short documentary that I did that was even played in Congress and helped pass legislation. So the video done in the right way can really move the needle. And I am such a big believer in the power of the emotional connection. There was actually a study done by a Harvard professor, a professor of the Harvard Business School, and he found out that 5% of purchasing decisions are based on unconscious emotional connection. So if you're in business, this is a marketing tool that you need to be using, that emotional connection. And so the brand video, so the story I was telling before was like, I've been doing this for 15 years as a documentary filmmaker. When I've kind of stepped aside from that world, early last year, I left NBC after 5 years, and I was like, okay, I want to build my own thing. I realized that so few people, like I have so few examples outside of my own program of the brand video that I think and I'm seeing really can move the needle. And so really what what I'm doing is like bringing the power of that really intimate personal storytelling to business. We know that people want to do business with people. We know that we make purchasing decisions not just based on the promise of the results, not just based on scarcity and urgency, not just based on testimonials. Like those all help. Those are all the components of it. But at the end of the day, you are asking yourself, do I want to take this journey with this person? Do I want to get that result? Do I want to get this problem fixed with this person who's offering it, right? With this business? Like, do I align with this business? I would argue that like if you have a leak in your toilet, maybe those are not all the questions that you go through, right? If you have an urgent problem, if you have a broken leg, you just go to the hospital, right? But for a lot of other things, we do think about consciously or unconsciously, we're thinking about, does this brand align with values that I feel good about? And so that's what I'm bringing to the table in a way that's not in your face marketing, right? It's like, every founder, every business should have a person behind it, should have like, regardless of whether it's one person or many. I work specifically with folks where they're kind of the face of their business. And, but regardless of whether that's the case, you should have values that are represented throughout your marketing, throughout your messaging. And so the brand video just kind of brings that together under sort of we're in the thread of one story. That's the story of why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. How do because you talk about, let's say you've got audiences and stuff, and if you put together such a brand video and you're really telling this company's story and you're trying to connect on a deeper level with the audience and such, what kind of influence can it have on them? So that, they want to, build, they want to do business with these companies, with these people and stuff.
Right.
How far can it go?
Totally. So the way that I described it, Cash, is this. A lot of businesses, many businesses, I would say most, if not all businesses, are online in some way or another, right? And most of them will be on social. They're like posting here and there. In some way they're becoming visible. And I work in the online space, and so I'm constantly thinking and kind of analyzing people that I follow. And as I said, are doing that, right? Know that. The way that I see so many brands coming or being present in these spaces, a lot of times is either they're like directly selling, or they, in the sort of online space that I work mostly with, which are like coaches, they are focused so heavily on like providing value. Like, I'm going to show you that I'm the expert. This is the thing that can help you. This is how you think about this. This is how you fix this. Like, look how smart I am. Like, they're constantly providing value. That's kind of the marketing direction that a lot of businesses are going now, right? It's not about you, it's about your customers. So help them as much as you can, right? The way that I see what's happening is that they are microdosing their audience with their personality. And in a way, it's it's hurting their sales cycle by not sharing about themselves as well. You know, the essence of business is human connection. And so if you leave yourself out of the equation, it's going to take your audience so much longer. So many more of these like drips of like, oh, there's a little bit of that person that's shining through. I'm like putting the pieces together every time a piece of their content scrolls by, right? And instead, I'm like, okay, why are we doing this to ourselves? Take your entire story, like this beautifully crafted story that we work on in my program. Have that be the thing that they see everything else through. It's the lens through which all of that other content becomes content that's coming from a friend and not just from this person who's going to ultimately try to sell me something, right? And so the brand video essentially creates that connection right at the forefront. So what I teach is that the brand video should really live. It should be the first thing that people watch as soon as they come into your universe. They've been attracted by value. They've been hooked. They saw your comment on a post. They saw something, right? They come into your universe. So for example, let's say they land on your Instagram account. This is what people do when they land there. They kind of assess, right? Do I want to follow this person? Do I not want to follow this person? Do I want to follow this brand? Do I not want to follow this brand? And the way they do that is by kind of looking through some content. Then you either hit follow or out you go and bye-bye, right? Yeah. If your brand video is kind of pinned right at the top and you have some sort of hook, which is like, I can just tell you about a recent client who just published her brand video last night. She's a sobriety coach, and her hook was like, it started with a glass. And it's a story of how every night she's a high achiever. She's, a totally non-alcoholic in sort of the traditional terms of that world. And anyway, that was her hook. And so the idea is that her audience will now want you before they even like dive more into her universe. But now every time they see her content, it's going to be, oh, it's Casey. It's that woman whose journey I followed. Yeah. It's the woman who's like visual. Like, I connected with her. She's a friend now, even if they don't know you. Why do we love influencers, right? Because we know who they are. We've been able to we've been exposed to so much of who they are as people. And so that's what the brand video does, but in one video.
Yeah, that's a good example of, kind of comparing it to influencers and stuff, because you're letting them sort of in, to your life a little bit, what you believe and, why, you're passionate about your business and what you're doing and what you have to offer and everything. I don't know, the Sam Adams commercials came to mind, Jim Coke, like the founder and everything, because he always said, why did he want to do craft beer and such, and he always tried to, like, through every commercial, tell a little bit. It, like you mentioned, it's not all the story at once, but he was always, reinforcing it, so you did understand that. And it's like, because you got a passion for the beer, and other people can do that kind of stuff through their own stories and whatnot and put it front and center instead of, like you mentioned, having it drip, a little bit, here and there through a social media feed or something, and you never really get the complete picture. Yeah. So, and then, pin it at the top, have it on your website.
You're doing your audience a disservice, right? If it takes them a long time to know whether you're the right fit for them, that whether your service is, whether your company is the one that they want to engage with and buy from, you're doing them a disservice. Think about how much happier they will be to either make that decision a lot more quickly and ka-ching, ka-ching, that's great for your business, or to realize that you're not a fit and they can go elsewhere. And we're all happy with that too,
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense, to tell the story all up front, especially, for smaller businesses, you're not going to have the same kind of resources necessarily to do the drip anyway. Yeah, I see how you're shortening the sales cycle because we're just saying up front, this is everything, and please, take the 2 minutes to watch this and such. But also, you want to be able to say it up front because I say if you try to take the time, they could end up, those people are going to go somewhere else. They don't ever get the complete picture, and you don't necessarily have the budget for it. It's going to be a lot more cost effective. It's going to be more impactful to do it in the beginning.
For sure. I mean, who wants a long sales cycle?
Yeah, nobody really does, so if you're putting together, and I guess, how do you coach people, like the elements you're going to need? What do you have to put into these videos, the different, pieces to make them work, to make them impactful?
For sure. So we focus a lot on your core story. At the end of the day, the story is what's going to carry the video. So you might have like the most gorgeous cinematography, but if the story isn't there, we know that people are going to stop watching, right? Same with a beautiful bad movie. We don't know. Oftentimes we're like, it's great, but not great. And so we focus on core story. The core story is the one story that you tell about yourself. Is 2 to 4 minutes. So it has to be kind of short, actually. But we're really carefully choosing it word for word. We create a script based on a language that your audience uses. So a lot of market research is so important. Understanding exactly what the pain points are, understanding what values your audience resonates with. And then I teach there are 2 types of stories that that most people will fall into. Either it's an overcome story. So you're helping, and again, with my audience, which are mostly coaches, you're helping somebody overcome something that you've overcome. Or, as you mentioned, you have a passion story. So that's my story. That's maybe a lot of other people's stories as well, where you haven't necessarily overcome this challenge or this obstacle, but you can dive deep into why it is that you love and really are kind of obsessed with doing what you do. And I'd say if you're not obsessed with doing what you do, maybe ask yourself, what are you doing? But anyway, let's say that you should at least be in love with helping people and in love with what you're doing, because that is the easiest way to sell, by the way. When people see your passion and if you're on fire about getting your audience, your customers results, that is a huge marketing push right there. Anyway, so we focus on core story. We craft that one story, whether it's an overcome story or passion story, very carefully. As I said, it's not just your story. It's what will resonate with your audience. What do you know resonates with your audience about your story? So it really is the intersection of your story with what resonates. And then the second kind of component to video is obviously your visuals. So I teach a lot about compelling visuals. Most folks work in front of a laptop, and that is not a compelling visual. So we talk a lot about what visuals kind of illustrate emotion, so a lot of things in nature can illustrate emotion, but even things like not. So one of my students, for example, she's a podcast teacher. She helps businesses create their own podcast, start and launch a podcast. And she doesn't even have a podcast herself, but she's amazing at it. And so we started looking at, so what are your values, right? What are the things that make you amazing at doing this? What does your audience need to feel? That is the biggest question of the entire thing. What does your audience need to feel right after watching your brand video? What is the feeling they need to have in order to be that much closer to buy from you? A lot of times it's confidence. A lot of time it's feeling that, again, they resonate with your values. They feel like you get them. She gets me, he gets me, right? Mm-hmm. Or I really love what they're doing. I really care about the same things. And so in Julia's case, she, again, doesn't have a podcast, but she's obsessed with systems. She's obsessed with order. She worked in a library when she was a teenager and loved it. She loved putting books away. She loved learning. She loved being in so the library is kind of where a lot of her visuals are coming from. But I asked her, so what do you love to do? What are your hobbies? And she's like, I don't like to do much. I'm sorry. I don't even know if she might listen to this episode and be like, I said other things. But she did mention the thing that stuck with me. She mentioned I love jigsaw puzzles. And I was like, perfect. A jigsaw puzzle is what? Pieces are in chaos and you put them in order to create something beautiful. So this is where your passion can be illustrated in something that's, metaphorical, which is, again, like part of compelling visuals, or like, what can we see that sort of tell a story beyond the thing that we're seeing? If we're talking about you working, we don't necessarily want to see you working, right? We want to see what are the values and the things that are driving you, but it can be illustrated with other things. My own brand video, which is being edited right now, it's a lot in the ocean. I love being in the water. I love being in nature. All those things like really speak to me. In addition to my kind of entrepreneurial past, when I was 6 years old and I started my first business in my neighbor's garden shed. I started a little school for kindergartners and I charged them 25 cents a pop. So I tell that story of how like I've been an entrepreneur my whole life.
Yeah. Video, like there's been a rise, of course, in short form video and other types of videos, but these ones are somewhat underutilized, though. You still don't see a lot of them being, used by businesses and the founders, entrepreneurs and such, that run them. Why do you think they're underutilized, to this point? And, for different industries and such.
Oh my gosh. That is a question that I am still baffling with, Chase. So when I kind of stepped aside from the documentary world, I couldn't believe how few businesses are using this type of storytelling. And so I think in part it's lack of awareness. I think in part, in order to do something really kind of elevated and it's a skill set like other skill sets, right? I can't fix my sink to save my life, but I can tell a really good story and I can teach other people to do it. And so I think it's also, not everyone kind of understands sort of the mechanisms of a story. What I'm hoping I've achieved in my program so far, so good, is really simplify that as much as possible. Like not talk about the hero's journey like it's a Lord of the Rings movie. It really is just, what was your old normal? What happened? And what's your new normal? Like that's the framework that we work with. So I think it's just like businesses. So I think we're just kind of comfortable with corporate videos where we can talk about the features and talk about the offer without turning sort of the lens and the narrative on ourselves. I think it's kind of safer that way. It's sort of the more traditional marketing route that's worked for a long time. I would say it's pretty stale. Like I don't connect at all when I see videos like that, unless it's like an explainer video, right? It's a piece of tech and I do want to understand how this works. Then I would like that video definitely still has its place, of course. But if it's just like a straight up like glossy business video, it doesn't move my heart at all. So I think we're in this amazing moment right now in marketing, in society, where we really are paying attention to people are buying based on values more than ever. And so I am so excited that I get to bring this kind of storytelling to the business world. And to me, like it disheartens me that not enough people are using this. Like nobody's using this. Like so few people. There are a few examples, right? It does exist, but it's tend to be like very few and far between. And I would love to see, and this in every single business should have a brand video.
Yeah, an ROI standpoint, I mean, how effective, for small business owners, because any kind of video is going to be an investment. If you're being coached on the things you should be doing, or if you're, going straight and you kind of know what your story is, you want to, be able to tell it, there's an investment. So, when business owners are considering doing this kind of thing, for them, how do they get the maximum, I guess, amount of traction out of it? Once they put it together, because it's like, if I'm going to spend this, what's going to be my return? How do I maximize my return on it?
Right. So the way you maximize your return is you make sure that every single person that comes into your universe, you've done the hard work of attracting them, you've paid for the ad, you've been present, right? They have come into your universe for some reason. Maybe it was a referral. You have to make sure they see your brand video right at the top. So the way I describe it is that the brand video is the lens through which they should see everything else after that. everything you spend on content marketing, every other effort that you do in advertising, whatever it is, every time thereafter that they come across your brand, they come across your company, they will remember that brand video. Why will they remember it? Because it sticks, because we connected, because we did the hard work of making sure that the values and the mission and your personality that come through in the brand video resonate with your audience. A brand video is only as effective as your market research. Is how much do you actually know your audience? How much do you actually know the people who are buying from you and what they need to have felt at that point in order to hit buy, right? In order to actually do business with you. And so making sure that there's visibility on your brand video. It should be in your email signature. It should be pinned on the top of your social media profiles. It should be in your link in bio. It should also be on your homepage, on your sales page, on your About Me page. About Me page is like the second most visited page on your website. That's where people go for a reason. They want to know who you are. And so are they going to read a couple paragraphs and fall asleep, or are they going to watch a brand video that's going to completely change, again, everything that they see thereafter is going to be through the lens of that connection. And so the way I explain it is like, think about how you get an email from a friend, and think about how you get an email that you're subscribed to a newsletter, or it's spam, whatever it is. Like everything else just kind of, to me, falls into, I guess with a few exceptions of the brand that have won your loyalty because you've been exposed to them for so long and you've been able to kind of piece together what their values are little by little. Those may be aside, but everybody else kind of falls into the same bucket. And instead, the brand video kind of puts you into the bucket of the close friend. You've built that trust. So now everything else that comes into their inbox and every other point of contact is going to be coming from a friend and not from this business that's going to try to sell you, and that is so, throwing confetti on themselves about their features and how good they are. It's instead going to be from Cash, and from Joe or from Miranda, and their stories that we remember because we watch this really incredible brand video.
When you do these kinds of videos, is there any particular, tone or style, thinking of the videos can be funny, or they can be, they need to be more serious or things like that. Is there a particular recommendation that you have that when you're telling these, because, you're talking about your company and it's influencing how people will see and perceive your company?
For sure.
So is there a way to go about it?
Yeah. So there isn't a one size fits all. I have to say that I tend to, the stories that are way more in my wheelhouse. I don't do comedy as much personally, like in my background. Mm-hmm. And so I love the documentary style approach for a reason. The reason why we watch a documentary differently than we watch a Hollywood movie or a commercial for that matter is because a documentary tends to be like real people doing real things, right? We're kind of in their universe. Not really, I'm being super broad here, but for the most part, we feel like we're not being manipulated. We're just we're a fly on the wall. We're watching this unfold, right? We're right next to them, and we can really connect with them. And so for that reason, the typical kind of documentary that tends a little bit more towards it just has to be intimate, Cash. So you can be intimate and funny. You can be intimate and a little bit more dramatic if your story, is dramatic. You obviously always want to end on this note of there's this new normal, there's this positivity, there's that drive is coming through, the mission that you now have in life is present. But the tone really depends on what is true to you, right?
Yeah.
Are you Cash? Are you somebody who's always making people laugh? Are you somebody who's always bubbly, always vivacious, or are you kind of a little bit more reserved? And you connect. You're not cracking jokes all the time, or you're not, that sort of personality. So it really should it should mimic your story, and your story is who you are, right? So.
Yeah, who you are, not necessarily, who your business is, but what's going to also make sense.
Yeah.
You're probably going to be a central character to the video. Yeah.
Right.
So it's better to mimic who you really are, in
100%.
real life
Yeah.
versus,
Right.
don't be something you're not.
It's the buzzword of our times, which is authenticity, right? But it's it's an amazing buzzword. We should all be authentic all the time. So it really should be authentic to your personality. You should really match kind of who you are.
Well, this has been a great conversation. Really using video to enhance your brand, tell your story and stuff it is the way to go. There's not enough businesses that are doing it, and it can have a huge amount of impact. How would people get a hold of you if, because you do coaching on how to get these kinds of videos going. So how do people reach you?
For sure. The easiest way to find me is just brandmagnetic.com. I'm also on Instagram as Brand Magnetic. So I show up as myself a lot on there. That's the best way. I have a brand video starter guide for folks who would like to snap that up. That's on brandmagnetic.com. And it really is a great way to kind of get started thinking about your story and how you would build it. In my program, I teach people how to film it. There are 2 tracks. There's one track for folks who want to do this, on a low budget and want to film with their iPhone, edit on their iPhone. And then there's an elite track that you work with a cinematographer that I vet for you and I bring to your place. And we have the entire video kind of mapped out before we even hit the record button. And then my team edits for you. So it's a bit more hands-off in that sense. But we all do the work together of crafting your story. So, which is an incredibly important skill set to have. So brandmagnetic.com.
Okay, great. Yeah, crafting your story. I say businesses, they don't realize how much of a story they have to tell. And it does resonate with, the people they're trying to do business with if they're willing to tell it. If you aren't willing to say anything, it's not going to help you. So be, willing to tell your story, consider it because it's going to have a lot of impact. My name's Cash Miller. I'm the host of Marketing Masters. It's been another great episode. CEO of Titan Digital. Thank you for joining us again, and we'll see you on the next episode.